Greetings and welcome back to Room 303. We are here today to launch a new playlist that we will place at learnstrong.net down that left-hand side. We're calling this new playlist, The New is the New. The N-E-W is the K-N-E-W. Now, the genesis for this project has a lot to do with the fact that very recently Christopher Nolan has launched his new film, The Odyssey. And of course, right away, there's all kind of debate about, is it a legitimately classic film, or is there problems with it, or whatever. But I want to just point out really quickly that there's a reason why we say the new is the new. Of course, we'll think about that classic verse from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew Bible, chapter 1, verse 9. What is it? There is nothing new under the sun. The notion that no matter what you can come up with, there seems to be an argument to be made that it's kind of happened before. That is to say, it might be the case there is nothing new under the sun, N-E-W. But for sure, there's a whole lot that's K-N-E-W under the sun, if you get our drift here. And the argument that we want to make is that, no, a lot of the topics that we today consider to be so unbelievably new N-E-W are actually new K-N-E-W. I mean, think about the number of folks who right away when they came out of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey began to talk about things like, that horse that they were able to somehow figure out how to get inside the city of Troy that led to the end of that city. It's kind of like, and then you fill in the blank. I mean, for a lot of people, it was what? The idea of AI, artificial intelligence, as opposed to what we all would hope would be happening, AI, authentic intelligence, and the debate, of course, that surrounds technology in general. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Etc., etc. So we're talking about the great stories. And what do we want to remind ourselves about these great stories? Well, in Room 303, we've often said that we are the stories that we tell and retell. We're also the stories that we decide to accept or reject, aren't we? And in the course of our lives, as high school and college students and then beyond, we encounter all kinds of stories that we decide, you know what, for a long time I accepted that story, now I'm not going to accept that story anymore. Of course, when we think about stories and the greatness of stories, we go to certain kinds of lines. One of those lines for us in Room 303 is, of course, the great Samwise Gamgee's line that will come from The Lord of the Rings, where he makes an observation about the great stories. And already I can see some of you smiling as I get ready to read this, because this is a sacred set of lines for many, many people who have enjoyed, especially watching them rendered on film at the conclusion of, I believe, the second film. And of course, let's make sure we argue it is the extended version. It's like the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were in. Sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad has happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, the shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it'll shine out all the clearer. I know now folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something, that there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Now, we in 303 will call the texts of our playlist, The New is the New, exemplar texts. We normally don't qualify them as classics or any of those kinds of value-laden texts. We rather like the idea of just simply calling them exemplar texts. Now, in our playlist, and some of you are going to come to this playlist because you did, for example, enjoy your viewing of The Odyssey, the film, and somebody maybe said to you, it's actually a book you can read, technically a poem, and yet it can be kind of intimidating to pick up, for example, the texts that will tell the story of what Edith Hamilton in her classic mythology volume called The Troy Tale. In our playlist, we're going to begin with the Iliad, and then the Odyssey, both attributed to Homer, although we don't know a whole lot about who that was. And then we'll follow that up with the study of Virgil's poem, the Aeneid, Virgil, the great Roman poet, the Aeneid. We'll finish this list with Dante's Divine Commedia, the Divine Comedy, and then finally Milton's classic Paradise Lost. Now, our question here is simple, and I'm going to go through these really fast with you. I'm going to be reviewing. Obviously, we have full lectures at learnstrong.net that you can run to ground if you're interested. But the question for us when we pick up these exemplar texts in this playlist, The New is the New, is to ask, how can we learn through these texts while also enjoying them? That is to say, the old texts are the new texts, the K-N-E-W texts. How can we learn? And so we start always in room 303 with our definition of learning. It is a simple definition, and everything that we say in this lecture and in the lectures to come, if you elect to watch them in our playlist, is what we have said always in room 303. We are going to frustrate the experts because we're only working at the epidermal or the surface level, and yet I think it makes sense to at least get started on our study of these classics or these exemplar texts by calling to attention our learning theory, which is what? Well, when we're learning, we're trying or we're hoping or desiring to connect new information to old information in meaningful ways. When you're teaching me something I don't know and I go, hey, what you're trying to teach me is kind of like this other thing I already know, we'll qualify that as learning. And by definition, we want to be able to connect new information to old information in meaningful, creative ways. In other words, I'm getting information that I can use. In other words, you don't want to just read the Iliad so that you can say you've read the Iliad, although it's kind of fun sometimes to be able to say that. You want to have read the Iliad so that you can have some understanding of the world that you live in, so that you can have some sense of who you are, and of course, we can begin to start thinking a little bit about why we are. Those are the important stories, as Samwise said, right, that kind of lead us to think about the values of our life and the like. Now, we call what we do in 303 in our reading annotation. We are only looking to answer fundamentally 3 questions. What are those 3 questions? What does the text say? That is to say, we want to summarize it. What does the text mean? There's something different there. Okay, so we know the events of, for example, the Iliad or the Odyssey, but what is the meaning? And here we will splay, and we will talk about level 2A, themes, messages, and level 2B, rhetoric. Not what the poet or the writer says, but rather how the poet or the writer says it. Okay, that's our chance to think like a quote unquote think like an English teacher, and I'll apologize in advance for that one. And then finally, our third question, which is the most important because of our learning theory, we'll ask, how can I relate to this information? At 3A, how can I relate to this information in terms of other texts? And here, our use of the word text is very inclusive. We don't just mean what you've read. We mean what you've seen, what you've listened to, what you've watched. For many of you, because you're gamers, what games that you play. When you actually sit down and read the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid, that kind of what they call holy trinity of the first 3 great epic poems, it's stunning to gamers how many of the storylines that they play with came from those very old, ancient, but new K-N-E-W texts, okay? So we're always asking the question, how can I relate to other texts? And then finally, of course, most importantly, how can I relate to this text personally? For a lot of people who are deeply offended about what Christopher Nolan has done in the film The Odyssey, he's actually just worked to answer that third question. How does he personally relate to the text? And in so doing, he's made what I consider to be a really remarkable film. Okay? So in that regards, we're always working to play that game. Now, we're always considering, as we read as well, those questions that are kind of the oldest questions, aren't they? Right? I mean, think about the oldest questions in the history of questions. For example, let's just list them real quickly, all right? Question number 1, what can I actually know? This is, of course, the question of epistemology, right? What can I actually know? Can I say that I'm 100% certain in my knowledge? Or am I more inclined to say a lot of times what I think to be 100% certain, not so much? I mean, those guys pushed that horse into the city because they were sure, they knew that it was all going to be okay, and guess what? They didn't know very well. Now that study, of course, is what we call epistemology, and we're always interested in that because there is an absolutist position that says, I know and I'm right and you're wrong if you don't agree with me. We know the problems with that view. There's the relativist position that says, no, there is no truth, there is no meaning, there is no way to know anything actually. The only problem with that demonstrated by the student of mine who went to a freshman philosophy course, and the prof walked in and said, there is no truth, there is no meaning, there is no absolute. If you're interested in that, get up and leave now. And my student raised her hand and said, I have one question. The thing you just said, is it true? Because you just said there is no truth. But it seems like what you just said you want us to believe is true. So it seems like there might be at least one thing that is true. The performative contradiction, as we call it, for the relativist position epistemologically. It's kind of a dangerous position to hold. Which leads us to the third position epistemologically that we hope that we can derive, and obviously I'm going to challenge you guys in your reading to do that, and it's what we call in 303 the fallibilist position. And what is that in terms of knowledge? I think I'm right, but I could be wrong. That's an important thing. To say, I think I'm right, but I could be wrong, well, we have a word for that in the Western tradition. It's called science, isn't it? In other words, true science is the ability to admit the potentiality of being wrong. I'm going to collect data, and I'm going to hope that that data for me is something that, you know, makes sense or whatever. But if it invalidates what I already know, I'm going to live with that as well. The second question, of course, is who am I, or who are we? This is the ontological question. Sure, we're a body, but are we something more than a body? Well, it seems as if we're some kind of thinking organism, that is to say a mind. But if I cut off the top of your head, I look in your brain, I don't find your mind. So to what degree do I have a mind? Well, you got to have a mind to argue there is no mind. And then even beyond that, is there the possibility of something called spirit or soul? Now, these are ancient, old questions, but it is fun to pick up these classic texts or these exemplar texts and to ask, what do they have to say about who we are? The third question, what are our chief individual motivations and fears? We call this psychology. And then, of course, the fourth question, what are our chief motivations, our fears? We call this sociology. Another question, why must there be pain and suffering in the world? I mean, if I could hit a button and all the pain and the suffering in the world went away, would I do it? Well, the ball players in the house say, I don't think so, because it's the pain and the suffering that defines the competition that I love so much. But what is the value of pain and suffering? We call this the question of theodicy. And of course, the question of theodicy is so ancient, so old. Again, it's the new that is the new, right? We've been asking that question for a long, long time. And we've often said in Room 303 that the best answer to the question, why must there be pain, is to learn to ask not why did this happen to me when it happens, but rather to learn to ask, why did this happen for me? Like, what's the point? When I change the 2 to the 4, I change from being a victim in this universe to being somehow capable of finding value in pain, even though, of course, I would hope that that suffering doesn't actually happen all the time to me. The next questions, of course, have to do with wisdom. Like, what's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? Now, these we call our 7 cardinal virtues, right? They're from long ago. Wisdom, this is the Platonic cardinal virtues. Wisdom, right? Where I'm not talking about what I know, but rather how I use wisely what I know, right? So to help others, to help myself, to help others. What about courage? What does it mean to have courage? Okay, and can we have extreme examples of courage that are sometimes not so healthy? In other words, do I have the ability to actually live the wisdom that I have? Plato also says, of course, in Republic, that there's this thing that we will call, hard to translate, discipline. Some think of it as patience. The willingness to actually stick with something. What do these texts say about that? And then, of course, for Plato, it's justice. The idea that you're going to treat others with a certain modicum of respect. Do we find that at play? Of course, we have as well what are sometimes referred to as the Pauline virtues of faith, hope, and love. What do these texts say about faith? What do these texts say about hope? And of course, what do these texts say about love? Some have even added 3 more questions that are the Jeffersonian virtues of what we say life. What do these texts say about life and its value? Liberty or freedom. What do these texts say about that? And then obviously the pursuit of happiness, or Scooby Snacks as we call it in Room 303. We'll comment that often Scooby Snacks are an illusion, and yet they're a powerful one. And to us, of course, the question of happiness is important as well. Now, we're always working in our reading goal to be what Francis Bacon will challenge us to be in his classic essay of studies. We don't weigh to necessarily just argue against, but rather, what does he call it? Weigh and consider. That will be a goal for us. In other words, we're not interested in liking or disliking the Iliad. We could care less. Those are childish views. We're interested in appreciating, We want to understand, how do these texts work, and to what degree can I appreciate those texts? That's what we're always working with. And we're trying to understand connections. So for example, you want to pick up, because you watched Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, you want to pick up, for example, the books and read them. I recommend that you don't just pick up The Odyssey first and read it, and here's why. You can't really understand Odysseus the character unless you pick up the Iliad and read especially up through book 9. Why? Achilles has been offended. Of course, he's been treated poorly by Agamemnon, and he is sitting in his tent, we are told, with his best friend or lover, Patroclus. And Agamemnon decides, we need Achilles back. We will send 3 men to Achilles' tent, and there we will convince Achilles to return to the war. And we're told that the 3 men who arrive, one of them is Odysseus, that when they arrive, they see Achilles all dressed up nice, and he's playing on a harp, and he's singing songs about old warriors. We're told he's having a crisis, Achilles, because he's not sure he wants to enter the war anymore, because he's not sure that the 2 reasons that he always thought, what we call kleos and time, that is to say, Scooby snacks and a reputation, that he has any reason to want to do that anymore. And it is Odysseus who tries to convince Achilles to return to the war. Now, if you understand that moment, and Achilles watching the great warrior, Odysseus watching the great warrior Achilles having his spiritual crisis, you can appreciate better the Odysseus that Christopher Nolan is trying to create. Why? Because Odysseus himself is trying to come to terms with a certain kind of spiritual crisis. There are people who say, no, that doesn't exist in the Greek culture. They haven't clearly read closely Iliad 9, and I recommend and challenge you to do so. In other words, we're always trying to put together these texts. We're connecting them in profound ways. Once you have read the Iliad and the Odyssey, you can pick up Virgil's Aeneid. Once you've done that, you can pick up Dante's Divine Comedy, and then finally you'll be able to pick up maybe the greatest poem of them all, Paradise Lost. And I'm hopeful that you'll be able to do that. I've given guided lectures through all of those texts, book by book, and I'm going to challenge you to pick those up, read them on your own, and then obviously read them with me. Now, this is just one playlist, obviously, that we have at learnstrong.net. We have others for you. We have chats with Emily where we're working through all of the 1,775 poems of the Johnson edition of the Poems of Emily Dickinson. We have already done a Talks with Walt where we did all of the poems of Walt Whitman in his classic Leaves of Grass. We've got a Harvard's Classic lecture list, playlist. We've got the playlist that's called The Play is the Thing, where we talk about drama and introduction to drama. I've got a list on Gibran's The Prophet that I'll recommend to you as well. Roots of the Sea is a fun playlist, an integral approach to story. We've got a playlist called Sister Wisdom that focuses on female authors and the female voice through time. I hope that you'll enjoy that one as well. I hope that you'll pick up any or all of these lists at learnstrong.net, and I'll hope that you will enjoy them as you come to terms with this idea that really fundamentally the new is the new. The NEW is the KNEW. Thank you.